considering the US's reluctance to engage in a long, drawn-out military conflict?
Well, it's a very good question. The two leaders have been speaking at the White House here this morning. President Obama and President Hollande are still speaking as we speak. President Obama saying that the Paris attacks were not just an attack on the city itself, but also on the world of many people of different backgrounds and races. He said that the two partners had agreed to ramp up coordinated strikes against ISIS, but also to do more to stop attacks from happening on home soil. He also made a direct appeal to European nations, putting the European Union under considerable pressure to implement a very controversial data sharing agreement, a passenger data sharing agreement, which he said is long overdue, which would help make counterterrorism efforts much more effective.
Nina, are we getting any sort of idea about the type of military support that the US will offer France? And also, does the US have a clear picture on how they're going to fight ISIS?
Well, I think President Obama is under considerable pressure to come up with a plan. The two leaders are meeting in very uncertain times, and just as tensions have dramatically escalated this morning with the Russian President Vladimir Putin lashing out at Turkey the NATO member Turkey for the downing of a Russian jet, with Vladimir Putin very much pointing the finger at the Turkish government, saying that Turkey had been assisting ISIS militarily and financially and with material support. And that accusation has both undermined and dramatically destabilized French President Hollande's attempts to build an international coalition. He sets off for Moscow on Thursday. There's a certain degree of dissatisfaction here in Washington that President Hollande is appealing personally to Vladimir Putin. And although there's a deep reservoir of goodwill here towards France, especially after the attacks in Paris, I think there's a degree of suspicion as well that France is appealing personally to Russia. The belief here is that Russia should have joined that international coalition all along.
Taking all of that into consideration, are we likely to see the US cooperate with Russia? Because until now, the White House has ruled out any real military cooperation with Russia. You mentioned that President Hollande is on his way to Russia after the US. So is this position likely to change?
I think it's very unlikely. In fact, in today's talks with President Hollande, President Obama said specifically that Russia's role can only be constructive if it stops targeting and hitting moderate rebels in Syria, which only serves to support ISIS, in his view. He said that Russia needs to shift strategy and target ISIS alone and join the international coalition. So I think as far as the US administration is concerned, Russia shows no indication that it is likely to shift its stance towards the West and towards the US. And certainly the upping of the rhetoric today by Vladimir Putin, who accused Turkey of stabbing Russia in the back, very much pits Russia against NATO, which Moscow sees as the aggressor, and which, of course, the US, France, and Turkey are key NATO members and members of that alliance.
That was our US correspondent, Nina Maria Potts, in Washington.